Back in August of 2007, there was an article that ran in one of the local daily newspapers here. It's called the San Bernardino Sun. And it was an article about this people who wanted to form this group called a Drug-Free Community Coalition. They were going to call it the Inland Empire Drug-Free Community Coalition. These drug-free community coalitions are sponsored by the Office of National Drug Control Policy. They have over 700 of them throughout the country. They're funded by them. And Paul Chabot and his group wanted to start one here in the Inland Empire, get that funding, of course. And because he had a number of these drug-free groups, and here was a chance to actually get some money from the government. So they wanted to get some publicity, and they went to the San Bernardino Sun and said, hey, we're forming this group, we're going to have a meeting, would you give us some publicity? And they did an article on them. And now you would think a drug-free community coalition, they're going to be concerned with drugs in the community. And what would the drugs they'd be concerned with? Well, in our area, they would certainly be concerned with heroin. Oh, most definitely. Methamphetamines, big problem here. But they didn't even talk about heroin and methamphetamines at all. All they talked about was medical marijuana and closing the dispensaries that were out there providing this to medical marijuana patients. That's all the article was about. And I said, well, this is really off the wall. You mean, you think they would be concerned with methamphetamines, not medical marijuana. But all they talked about in the article was medical marijuana, not heroin, not methamphetamines, which are a really serious problem in the area which he would want to do it in. All he talked about was medical marijuana, and I couldn't figure out what is going on here. And the article said there was going to be their first meeting on October 2nd at the senior center. And so I wrote them an email asking about it, and they sent me an email back saying, yeah, you can, we look forward to having you there and this kind of stuff. So I sent out I have a group that I formed, the Marijuana Anti-Prohibition Project, that has a newsletter, and I sent it out to about 1,000 people or so at that time on the newsletter. And I said, hey, they're doing this, come on out and see what it's all about. This group is all about, going after medical marijuana. And so I went out there, and a few other people went out. And when I walked up to the front desk where you have to sign in, a person by the name of Adam Ailman, who was an assistant for a San Bernardino supervisor named Bill Potmus, who eventually was convicted of crime and thrown in jail, and so was Adam Ailman for destroying public property. He recognized me from a video, of some videos I did. I did a TV show for a while called Marijuana, Compassion, and Common Sense, and a lot of the shows were on the internet, and he had seen some of them. And he recognized me. He goes running up to Paul and said, hey, that guy's a medical marijuana activist. And this guy, Paul Chabot, who I never knew, just became unglued and came running up where I was signed up and says, you can't come here. We don't want, quote, we don't want you people here, and you got to leave. And I was kind of taken back, and I said, what do you mean I want to leave? You're holding this in a public building. You've invited the general public. You even sent me an email saying you're looking forward to me coming here. And I drove all the way from Palm Springs to Rancho Cucamonga, which is about an hour and a half. I'm not going back here. I'm going to go to that meeting. And I walked inside, and some of the other people who were with me all walked in as well. And we sat in the back row. The meeting started. About 10 minutes after the meeting started, I get this tap on my shoulder. It's a San Bernardino sheriff's officer from the city of Rancho Cucamonga. And he said, you folks have to come outside. I want to talk to you. So I said, okay. We all walked out, and he said, Mr. Chabot doesn't want you here, and so you're going to have to leave. And I said to him, well, officer, I think we have every right to be here, but we're not going to argue with you. If you're telling us to leave, we're going to leave. And he said, thank you very much. And then he said, Mr. Swerdlow, I want to talk to you privately. And I said, talk to me privately? He said, no. I said, if you want to talk to me, you talk to me with these other people here. There was 3 other people there. And he said, okay, Mr. Chabot says you pushed him, and he wants you arrested. He signed a citizen's arrest for battery. And he had me turn around, handcuffed me, and took me out to his patrol car and put me in the back of his patrol car. And I sat there for about an hour and a half until the meeting was over, at which point they came back, took me out of the patrol car, took the handcuffs off me finally, and issued me a citation for battery, saying that I had to appear in court. Well, Chabot went ahead and went to the DA's office and filed a complaint against me for battery, and the San Bernardino District Attorney's Office prosecuted me. It was unbelievable that they prosecuted me. I mean, this was a case in which Paul Chabot said I pushed him. That's all. Just pushed him. Didn't fall down. Nothing happened to him. Just got pushed. He had a witness that said I pushed him. I had a witness that said I didn't push him. So he had two witnesses saying, one said yes, one said no. He said I did. I said I didn't. Nobody got injured. Nothing happened. What's the chance of a DA's office assigning a DA to prosecute a case like that? Just about zero. It's considered a prosecutor's nightmare. It's almost impossible to approve beyond a reasonable doubt. But they did it. And the reason the DA's office went after me in this ridiculous case is because I am the medical marijuana activist with our Marijuana and Prohibition Project, and that was a time in which the city of San Bernardino, along with San Diego County, the county of San Bernardino, along with the county of San Diego, had filed a lawsuit to have Proposition 215 declared unconstitutional because they said it required them to issue this state ID card, and to doing so would make them violate federal law. And every 3 months or so, I would march about 80 to 100 people to a San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors meeting. And they always had this public comment section. And so for about 2 to 3 hours, the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors was harangued by patients decrying their waste of taxpayers' money and all this kind of stuff on this lawsuit, which was being done mainly at the instigation of the San Bernardino District Attorney's Office. So they thought this was a chance to maybe take me out. If they can get the jury to convict me, that they could take me out. And Paul Chabot was a very, very, straight-laced character. I mean, he was an officer in the Army. He had gone to Iraq. He served in the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office. He ran these organizations trying to protect kids from drugs. So they thought he very charismatic person. And here I was, this elderly medical marijuana activist, and they thought they could probably maybe convince the jury to get me. Well, it was interesting that during that time, I found an attorney. She came and she represented me. It was a 4-day trial, 4 days, about whether I pushed him or not. And it went on, and it's just unbelievable. Well, after the trial was concluded, the jury was recessed for not much more than 90 minutes, and they arrived at a conclusion, and the conclusion was I was not guilty of the charge of battery. And Paul Chabot was very upset. In our area, it got a lot of publicity. All the local newspapers, the San Bernardino Sun, the Indian Valley, were all carrying it. Front page news, believe it or not. And so after about 6 months after the not guilty verdict, I filed a civil lawsuit against Paul Chabot for false arrest and malicious prosecution, saying that he lied when he had me arrested and he prosecuted me maliciously. The trial, it went on for 4 years. His lawyer kept putting one stalling after another, trying, I guess, maybe to get to the statute of limitations, and they almost got it there until finally a judge says, this is it, no more. He told the lawyer, you either show up or I'm going to hold you in contempt of court. And so we had the trial. And I had an attorney who was representing me, but after about 2.5 years, he quit. And the reason he quit was because a trial date was set. He would set a week of his time aside for this trial. And then 2 to 3 days before the trial, they would get a postponement. And it was costing him a fortune of money. And he says, I just can't do this anymore. And I couldn't interest another lawyer to take it, so I had to represent myself. And so we went to the court. We had a 3-day trial. And I caught him lying, just like he did in the original trial, where he made statements like he was an LA police officer. He was not an LA police officer. He claimed all kinds of things. We showed things, and then once again, he continued his lies, and we were able to show where he was just a liar, and the jury didn't believe him. So after he had filed a counter lawsuit against me, by the way, trying to, once again, saying I pushed him. And he was hoping this time the original court was criminal, so they had to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. That's why it's a prosecutor's nightmare. It's very difficult to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. This, in a civil trial, it's only a preponderance of evidence. So he thought, now maybe it would be easier to get me convicted. Well, what happened was the jury found him guilty of lying, false arrest, and did not find me guilty of battery, which he had charged. So he lost. And the jury, he was ordered to pay a little bit over $10,000 to me in fines and court costs and this kind of stuff. But most importantly, he's now what's called a Brady Cop. A Brady Cop is a Supreme Court decision which says that if a peace officer, somebody associated with the police, is ever convicted of lying in court, whenever they testify ever again, this fact that they lied in court before has to be made known to the jury and the judge and this kind of stuff, which of course totally taints their testimony and makes anything that he would say in the court suspect, which makes him just about useless as a witness ever again. So that's how it happened. Well, you know, it's funny, because after I got the judgment, I got a judgment for over $10,000, I didn't get paid. It was almost like a year. And I had, you know, I'd sent letters to him and all this kind of stuff, and he wouldn't pay. And so suddenly he jumped in to run for Congress. He was going to run for assembly, state assembly, but then at last minute he changed his mind and decided to run for the Congress. The congressperson that in his district, I think it's the 31st, but I'm not going to stake my life on it, so 33rd yesterday, had retired. He was a Republican congressman, and he had retired. And so he wanted to run for the seat, the Republican seat. It would be somewhat easy to get, although the district had recently flipped to Democrat. Not by a lot. There was a couple thousand more Democrats registered than Republicans. But so he ran for in the primaries, and he won. He won against some big names. He ran. The mayor of Rancho Cucamonga ran. Spent over $100,000. He lost to Paul Chabot. Paul Chabot was a Tea Party guy, and so here he came into the big election between the guy who ran for the Democrat, guy named Pete. I want to say Albright. That's not his name. Aguilar. Pete Aguilar, and so Pete Aguilar and Paul Chabot were going to have this debate. And so I said, well, so I went to this debate, and I brought a bunch of people with me. And we had signs saying, Paul Chabot, you owe Lanny Swerdlow $10,000 payment, all this kind of stuff. And we were passing out these flyers about Paul Chabot, how he had lied in court and been convicted of being a Brady Cop and all this kind of stuff. And we were going to serve him a paper that I was told that I had to serve him in order to file a claim against in court. You have to serve him. And so this friend of mine tried to serve him, and he wouldn't take the paper. And we didn't know you could just throw it at his feet and say you would serve. No one told us that, or we would have done that. But he wouldn't take the paper. And so I started yelling at him, Paul Chabot, you owe me this money. You know, pay me up and this kind of stuff. And I followed him out the place and all this kind of stuff. It got written up in the paper, and it was kind of interesting. It was front page on the paper. And Paul Chabot had done Pete Aguilar had done a good job, but Paul Chabot did a better job in the debate. And he came out looking better. And so Paul Chabot was expecting this wonderful article to come out in the San Bernardino Sun talking about how he did a really good job at the debate and all this kind of stuff. But all the article talked about was the fact that after the debate, I was trying to serve him and get my money. That's all the article talked about. And I'm sure I would have loved to have seen him when he saw that article, because all it talked about was that he had lost this case where where he'd been convicted of false arrest, and he owed me money, he hadn't paid it. So about 3 or 4 months after that, I finally did get paid. And it was interesting. He didn't pay me, his insurance company paid me. And it was an automobile insurance policy. So somehow it seemed, somebody was this thing that, well, they were saying, and this has never been cleared up, that I was in an auto accident with Paul Chabot and I injured my back, and this was the money. I don't get it. Because Paul Chabot turned my life upside down. For that year that I was under criminal investigation, I made more trips than I can remember. I finally calculated, made 16 trips back and forth to the Rancho Cucamonga courthouse, filing papers, all this. I went through a 4-day trial. I don't know if you've ever sat and been in a trial in which you were being accused of a crime. If I had been found guilty, I could have lost my license as an RN, all kinds of things. It was really a horrid thing. This guy tried to destroy my life, and it was a lie. I never touched the guy. He made up this lie. He didn't want me into that room, that meeting room, and I should have said this earlier. He didn't want me into that meeting room because he was afraid I was going to ask him embarrassing questions. And he was kind of a semi-cop. He knew if he called the police and just said, oh, this guy is here and we don't want him here, he's trespassing, it wouldn't be much of a priority. The cops might not get out there for an hour or two. So he lied. He told the cops that I pushed him. That's battery. That's lights and siren stuff. So the cops would be out there right away. And they came out there and took me out of there, which is what he wanted. So he lied to get the cops out there to take me out there. And, you know, I had sent him a letter afterwards saying, well, listen, let's sit down and talk about this. He continued, went through, he filed the police report. He was vindictive to go after me. He was going after me. Sure. He didn't know who the hell I was, but I was this medical marijuana activist. I was also gay, and I'm sure he knew that. It's no secret that I'm gay. And not only that, it's no secret I'm an atheist. If you Google my name on there, because I used to be president of a group called the United States Atheists. So I was just the absolute antipathy of everything that Paul Chabot stands for. And he pulled out every single stop and made my life hell for a solid year. Threatened my livelihood and everything. And so this is not the kind of person that I think we should have in Congress. Sure. And so I want the citizens of that congressional district to know what kind of person Paul Chabot is. Well, he had a website in which he talked about how he was employed by the Los Angeles Police Department as an officer and went into drugs and this kind of stuff. And it turns out he wasn't. He was a security cop for USC. And apparently sometimes as USC, they interacted with the police department. You know, they had a problem, so they would call the Los Angeles Police Department down there. But he said in his website that he was a police officer with the Los Angeles Police Department. And he wasn't. He was just an out-and-out lie. And in court, we got him to, when he first testified, yes, I was a police officer in Los Angeles Police Department, blah, 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 blah. But then when my lawyer was going to have somebody from the LAPD come out there and testify that he was never a police officer, when he realized that was going to happen, he finally admitted in court that he was not a police officer. And he changed his website.